Welcome to the Learner Centered Collaborative podcast. I am your host, Katie Martin, and today we are joined by Mike Yates, a leading voice in reimagining school and the future of learning. He started his journey as a teacher and coach, where he saw both the potential of young people and the limits of traditional systems. That sparked his path into innovation from his role at Alpha, where he helped design a new model centered on agency, coaching, and purposeful use of technology, to his work at the Reinvention Lab at Teach for America, where he is focused on helping schools navigate what's next, especially as AI reshapes how we teach and learn. Every chance I get to interact with Mike, I always learn and am in awe of how he brings a rare blend of honesty, creativity, and heart to this work, and so excited to have him on the podcast today. He's one of my favorites to follow on LinkedIn, always tracking what he's sharing and his comments. So welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
All right. So we always like to start with a little bit of your story after the introduction.
Yeah.
So let's start with some of the ways that you would explain your experiences that have shaped you into the creative, innovative leader that you are today.
Yeah, and in some ways I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world. I just kept falling into things over the course of my life that were good for me. I think it starts like I had an upbringing by an educator. My mom was a teacher. She taught for 39 years and finally retired a few years ago.
Wow.
And it's just like just seeing her like get so much of her life back is really nice. After giving so much for so long, but just like being up close and personal with what it took to be a teacher. Um, my mom had won Teacher of the Year in her district multiple times, and so seeing what it meant to be a great teacher was really interesting. I never planned on becoming a teacher or going into education. Matter of fact, when I was like 12, my mother was like, "Hey, Mike, never be a teacher." It's like, oh, and that's exactly what I became. I fell into teaching and coaching, and I loved uh, the ability to push kids harder than they thought they could be pushed, and to watch them achieve. That was like the coolest thing to me. So yeah, I mean, I I feel like I just stumbled from thing to thing. I grew up hating school and I carried that with me into the classroom. So if the system said go left, I was going to go right just because. And in that like stubbornness, I found a lot of success with my students,
Mm.
a lot of success with colleagues, and sometimes I was really early to I didn't know I was early, but I was early. And sometimes I was just caught up in the moment, having fun, like figuring out, you know, figure out what I thought was next. So that's kind of how I sum up myself.
I love it. Well, it sounds like your mom knew you. If she told you not to go into teaching, maybe she knew you actually
Yeah,
would because you
yeah.
were going to go in the opposite direction.
That is probably what she did. Yeah, yeah,
She sounds like she was a pretty good educator. I love that. And you said you keep falling into things, but knowing you, like you fall into things, but good things come because you put effort in, you're curious, you are looking for what's possible. And I think whether you realize it or not, that's probably something that is keep pushing you in that direction because people see you as someone who's willing to try and take risks and keep learning.
yeah. I do think that. I mean, I biggest blessing that I had when I was in high school is I had this homeroom teacher who ended up being my favorite teacher ever. His name was Heath Martin, and he was probably the teacher that pushed me the hardest, but also sort of gave me the most leeway at the same time to sort of be me. And it was the first time that a teacher ever saw something in me that I really just could not identify in myself. And I remember him telling me, like, hey, like when the doors open, if you just walk through them, you will change the world.
Mm.
And in the moment, I was like, whatever. Like, but now at 35 years old, I'm looking back and it's like that's what I've done every time. Once the door is open, I've pretty much just been running through and figuring out what's next, while having a lot of fun along the way.
I love that. As we were talking about like professional learning, but that joy matters, trying things out, being willing to learn and walk through that door. For you, it feels like it just comes so naturally and probably how you've lived. But for so many people, walking through that door and taking that step is something that is the biggest barrier to some of those opportunities that could come.
Very true. Very true.
And like you said, look at where it's led you, which is very cool. And I've had so many of those experiences too, where I wouldn't have ever dreamed that I would be in the place that I am today, but it's
Yep.
because I've been like, sure, why not? This isn't working. Let's try something else.
Yep. Yep. And the why not me too? Like, like why not? Well, yeah, I'll
You
jump
look
in.
around, I guess, like no one
Yep.
else wants to. Like it sounds like a cool opportunity. Let's try it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that humility, but a little bit of confidence that, I
Yep.
could figure it out.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
So speaking of figuring it out, you've talked a little bit about your early years in teaching and some of the things that you've written on LinkedIn and places that you've shared your experience. You're both teaching and coaching, um, and the like limitations but possibilities in public school in particular.
Yeah.
So talk about that experience and what you've seen and your own experience and how that really drives you to think about your work in shaping the future of learning and the future of education.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about my teaching career is like when I came into teaching, so I guess my teaching career started technically when I was in college. When I was 19, I was working in this juvenile detention center and I was teaching music and poetry. And when you are in an environment like that and there's no grades and like they don't care about innovation or pedagogy, they don't care anything about any of that. All those guys cared about was like how you made them feel
Hmm.
and like what you were able to do together. And so I remember thinking like at the time, like I was like, man, like how are these kids gonna respect me? Because they're like I'm barely older than them. And I learned very fast on day one. It was not about them respecting me. It was about us together being on a journey, like figuring this thing out. And because I had that ice broken early in my life, when I became a teacher, the teacher of record, later on when I was 23, it was so much easier for me to trust students. And so what it looked like I was great out the gate. Like my first year teaching, I don't have the horror story that a lot of people have. Like my first year teaching was amazing. I taught speech and debate. So I taught speech classes. I was the speech coach. I was the assistant athletic director. I coached basketball and track and field. And well, my wife really coached track and field. I don't know anything about track. She ran track in college. I literally FaceTimed her and was like, "What do I tell these children?" And she like, don't. But that year, I just remember being involved in like so many parts of the school and loving it because it was like everything that I had been like all the sort of like hatred that I had for school, all these lessons that I learned, whether it be tutoring in the Upward Bound program in college or that juvenile detention center, like, that all sort of like served me really well in that environment. And it was only because of that first group of kids that I had, which I was teaching in this small classical private Christian school in Austin, Texas, where these students were like giving me feedback every day. Like it was that group that prepared me to go to Rosemont Sixth Grade Center, which was a Title I public school in Fort Worth ISD the next year, and like really get the most out of those experiences. And being in those environments year one and year two, I was able to see like very clearly, like, oh, pedagogically, these are the same model. They're financed differently. But the
Hmm.
way they're financed matters though. Like what I could get away with at this private school where we still had no money. Like I was actually paid less at the private school than I was at the Title I public school. But like what we could do with and for children was different. The parents' threshold for risk was different. The amount of red tape that I had to cut through was different. So seeing that like in my first 2 years of teaching for me was eye-opening. It was actually the very thing I remember coming home one day and telling my wife, it's like, look, I have to be a part of changing this system. I
Hmm.
cannot continue to exist in this system. I did a few more years, but eventually that's what led me to start really pursuing innovation.
A few things stand out to me. I'm like nodding over here and just like listening. I also loved my first year of teaching, and I know it's
Oh,
so rare.
good. Yeah.
I loved it. I still look back with such fondness. Man, those kids taught me so much. I still am in contact with them. I love them, but I didn't go in with a ton of expectation. I went
Mhm.
in feeling prepared, and feeling open and just like willing to learn. So that just like really connected for sure. But then you talking about you started off really successful because you had so many other opportunities
Yeah.
to work with youth and to be in those positions, um, that you weren't just like coming in fresh, like, I don't know what I'm doing as a young 23-year-old. Um, and it made me think about the opportunities when we are developing teachers, and we're in a lot of teaching shortages now and different ways where people aren't going into the teaching profession as they used to,
Right.
and how we might structure some of those opportunities for young educators to be guides, to work in, youth programs, to get those experiences early on in those internships that are outside of the public system to give them that vantage point. So anyone out there reshaping the future of teacher ed, let's start thinking about these pathways, not just in classrooms, but um, in different ways, and then working so that you are better equipped to start the year. Um,
100.
and then the last thing you said around, I have to be part of changing this system.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that you said that, and I love that you're doing it. I similarly have felt the same way. Those are the experiences, like sitting in the like school office with my district team, and we are working so hard. Everyone is just like doing all the things, and yet we are not making the impact we want because of all of the red tape and all of the different things that we're doing. And I remember saying to myself, gosh, I wish I was just outside of myself and there was somebody who come in from outside the district and help us
Yeah.
make sense of what we're trying to do, so we can not overlap and worry about all these programs, but really just get really clear on what we're trying to accomplish. So that orientation, I want more educators and leaders in the system to feel empowered to change it from within instead of waiting from someone on the outside to tell them what to do.
That's right. Yep. That's right. I love that.
So you did do something about it, and your journey like took a major turn,
Yeah.
when you started to work for Alpha.
Hmm.
So Alpha's a big name right now. A lot of people are talking about Alpha schools. A lot of people got a lot of opinions about Alpha
Yeah.
schools. A lot of hype. So maybe for just like starters, can you share a little bit about your experience? When did you start? What was Alpha when you were starting there? And yeah, just give us a little sense of, and for people who might not know, that those two people listening who don't know what
Yeah.
Alpha
Yeah.
School is,
Yeah.
give us a little background.
Yeah. I mean, along my journey, it was another one of those doors that opened, and I didn't, I actually, I hesitated with this one for a little bit, but my wife was like, "Hey, go through the door." Um, I, I was in some ways kind of, my hand was really forced to go there. Um, I had, I had a major falling out at a school that I was working at. I had been teaching these debate style history classes.
Mhm.
I was using the Harkness discussion, which is a roundtable discussion, and I had remixed it, and like students had been finding sources of their own, and the goal was for me to not talk. It was really cool, and we had, I knew something was wrong in this environment because we had a discussion about Colin Kaepernick. This is when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling, which now it's like so interesting to see him in a different context, like
Yeah.
starting an ed tech company. Um, uh, but I thought parents would be so upset, and parents like did not care. Well, then we did this discussion about global warming, and people were upset. They were like, "How dare you teach about climate change in this school?" And what I found was actually like some of the ugliest sides of parents in that community, lining up outside of my door. I had a student, I had a black student in that school who decided to protest the the Pledge of Allegiance, and like navigating all of that. Got to a point where the school was like, "Hey, you've worked enough days in your contract. We actually can't fire you. There is no cause, but like you can go home." So I actually had time. I was like, "Okay, this traditional system has rejected me again. Like it has let me down yet again. Now what do I do?" So I was supposed to go reshape this this charter school in Texas. I was supposed to reshape their seventh grade department, and what like trying to go back into what I believed was a traditional model. I literally could not stomach it. I only lasted 2 weeks. I was like, I gotta go do something else. And it
Mhm.
just so happened that LinkedIn was like, they sent me a notification. This is the first time they tried this. They were like, you'd be the number one applicant for this job. I was like, I don't know. Um, uh, this looks like a multi-level marketing scheme. And my wife was like, well, you have a job, so who cares? You should just like, if it's a real thing, you should apply for it. It was this school called Emergent Academy. That was what Alpha was called before we rebranded it.
Okay.
And I had this call with this weird guy named Graham Fry, and he asked me, "Hey, like, what did you do? Just tell me about your relationship to school growing up." And I said, "Man, I gotta be honest, I hated school, and I think I still hate school." And his response was, "Wow, I have never done this before, and I could be making a big mistake, but I think I'm going to offer you this job on the spot."
I love that.
And that's yeah, the door's open, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'm gonna run through this door. And it became, the next 3 years, 3.5 years of my life became the best training ground for what I do today. I mean, that experience at Alpha shaped a lot of who I am as a professional. It gave me the runway. The early days of Alpha, I mean, they were magic. Like really, they were. It was the best place in the world that you could be if you cared about education and innovation. Like there was a team full of like young, excited, very smart people who all of us wanted to solve the problem. We
Mhm.
worked 100-hour weeks. Like I know this is toxic today. Like everybody's like, that's toxic. But like we freaking loved it. Like the people that I was with, like I every time people ask me about it, I have to like hold myself back from like calling each individual name. But like I will shout out my guy Elliot Baker. Like Elliot is now at Primer. And
Mhm.
Elliot and I, like we spent so much time together. We built this like real bond. And like when we see each other in person, it's like the same like people that got hazed and like joined fraternities, it feels like that. Like it's like, was it a dream? Did it happen? Yes, it did. But we learned like he and I watched each other grow up as professionals at that school. We got to test everything we wanted. We had no budget. There was no constraints. There was nobody slapping your hand, nobody telling you, hey, you can't do it that way. Like we gave kids probably too much power. But coming from my background, like where I came from, I was like, these little rich kids are not more intimidating than this 14-year-old who committed unspeakable crimes that I was standing in front. Like y'all are not scarier than him. So like whatever feedback you have, bring it. Like make me better. And extremely high bar, very high pressure. It was awesome. It was amazing.
There's so many things just watching you talk about it, the joy that you
Yeah.
feel is really cool. And I think to you calling out that people will call it toxic, but I've been in those places where you're like, you love what you're doing and it is something that you want to give your time and energy to. That mastery, that craft of learning and growing, having the kids make you better, having your colleagues make you better. That is a great place to be in. And essentially, like, don't we want schools to be like that? Don't we want our learning ecosystems where adults are like growing and really learning and excited to be there? The kids are excited to be there. I think that's what ultimately we would want it to be about. And that agency and ownership I hear you talking about, right? Like you were trusted as an adult to do things, and so you extended that trust and power to the students.
Yeah. I mean, and to this day, if anybody from the early days of Alpha was like, hey, let's put the band back together and do it again, I'm going to do it again. Like it was great. I mean, and I think, for anybody listening, if you want the like if you want the original mission, because things have changed.
So let's hear it then. Tell us what is like from the early vantage point, what was the model? What was the way that gave you this much joy? We can talk about what's changed, but like what's the ideal state that really brought you a lot of joy?
Yeah, like the thing that we wanted to figure out is how you creatively reorganize the school day so that you can optimize for kids pursuing their passion. Another way that I put it is like we were using extrinsic motivation to help, like using it as a training experience so that when a student found the spark, when they found the thing that they were intrinsically motivated to do, they had all of that discipline and experience. Like the muscle memory is like, oh, I know what it's like to work hard when I don't want to do the thing because I've been doing that, right? So like we created a I mean, we created an environment that was second to none. So the three promises that Alpha makes to parents have always been the same. I think they're still the same, which is like all kids will love school, they'll learn twice as fast, and they'll learn life skills. I mean, it was radically that. It was very simply that. Um, and when we said love school, like we meant it. Like we surveyed every kid every 6 weeks, and like we asked them, "Do you love school? Yes or no?" And if the answer was no, then like there was no question. It was like you had to do something about it. That was a, and for me, I looked forward to that pressure. Like I was like, hey, if they don't love school, like me being a kid who grew up hating school and feeling like school was here to harm me, I was like, well, I'm not going to create that environment for other people. And if as a matter, if you want to hear the earliest takes on Alpha, I'm actually the only person that was speaking about Alpha publicly when all of this was happening. So
Hmm.
like some of like if you just search like my name and Alpha, you will find like podcast after podcast. I have a TEDx talk about it. Like it was, I mean, really it was like the apps were the least important thing that we did. We weren't calling them AI apps at the time. Like that's just marketing lingo.
Hmm.
Um, the
They're the
apps were
same apps that kids are using in every other school, right? The same like
yeah,
adaptive
Khan
technology
Academy,
tools.
yeah, IXL. Like it's like stuff right? Like it's not anything fancy. Um the thing that we bragged about was the workshops and like the experiences that we got to create and have with students. Like I'd probably say our biggest success story when I was there was we would host so we had a rule that if there was a if the workshop that you wanted to offer if it was available anywhere else in any form you could not do it that way, and that put tremendous pressure on us to be real designers, like real experienced designers, and it was so good for us. And I
So
remember
like couldn't if there was if there was a TED talk on a topic, you couldn't offer a workshop on it. Or okay.
like or like if you wanted to do financial literacy, like if you're like I want to teach that skill, you can't just teach financial literacy. You have to figure out a way to make it feel much more real. So an example of the way that I tweaked it was I created a workshop called The Flip, where I gave every kid 20 bucks. We went to Goodwill and they
Mhm.
bought something from Goodwill, and I was like, now since you used my money, you owe me 10 times the amount. And then I taught them how to flip stuff on eBay. And kids got scammed and they lost money and they like certain kid, but like at the end of the workshop, they finally understood like, oh, managing, like I gotta have money to manage money, right? So it was like that workshop was not available anywhere. You could not get that anywhere else other than Alpha. Um, we created our own version of TEDx talks for kids called Alpha Talks.
Mhm.
Right? So it was like, but I'll never forget the day that we had a student that rejected all the workshops. He was like, I don't want to do any of these. And the response to me from it was one of the things where I was like, oh, I think we really got this right.
Mhm.
Um, we didn't force him to do a workshop. We just asked him, all right, well, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to start a sticker business. So he like takes the flip workshop, makes enough money flipping stuff on eBay to buy his Cricut printer. And then me and this kid are walking around downtown Austin putting stickers where it's illegal to put stickers just to see if we could get people to call him. Like that was alpha at its peak. Like
So what are the misconceptions now or things that people get wrong about the model and where you see it, where it was at its peak?
Yeah, I think the main misconception is that it's all about the AI. Is that kids are spending all day on laptops. It's actually even still, it's the opposite. Like you know, 2 hours a day, students are using laptops.
Hmm.
But because people's paradigm for school is like pretty much all the same and it's all traditional, people imagine that they're like in like cubicles. And I'm like, no, dude, it's like kids are laying on the floor and they're like laughing and they're literally like we had like a matcha crew, like girls that would bring matcha to like like it was they there was so much freedom during that like core skills period of time. And what I would actually have to do in the old days, I would argue with people online and I would say, you know what? If you really want to know, if you really think I'm wrong, come visit.
Yep.
And like that is a unfortunately you can't do that these days anymore, but um the the number one misconception is that they're on laptops all day. That's not true.
Yep.
Um
Well, in fact, if you go to traditional schools or a lot of public systems, kids are on their laptops all day across all five, six, seven subjects. They're going in, and my understanding of alpha and these different models is like we're reducing the core content, the way we call them like linear skills that can
yep,
be taught, that can be personalized by different apps and tools in a way that's much more efficient than a worksheet that goes out to all the kids.
exactly.
And the guides are there to help mentor, support. You have your peers, and then you free up more of the day to apply in these workshops in ways
Yeah.
that are much more authentic and personalized, relevant in many ways.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I think in a nutshell, like I think that model works, right? Like um there are some changes that I really take issue with today. But I think ultimately, like if that's your understanding of the model, that's the correct understanding. It's like, yeah, we're reducing the pain of academics,
Yeah,
reducing the time that you have to spend so that you can get to the things that if you ask most people that they will say is most important.
right. Totally.
Yeah.
So if we've moved on, right? So you were there 3.5 years. It was joyous. You learned a ton. Students, youth learned a ton. As you think forward and you look at like what you want to see more of
Mhm.
in public schools or in systems in which youth are being educated, what are the takeaways? What are the lessons learned that you are really thinking about as opportunities in the future of school?
Yeah, like the first one I'll talk about actually comes from another misconception about alpha. There's this misconception that we were first, that we were the first people to try. And I'm like, listen, just because somebody's the loudest does not mean they were the first. Colossal Academy is a school that I shout out as much as I can because they were like when I was at Alpha, they were part of the inspiration for what we were doing. They were using apps to do academics, but they were like on a farm or like on the beach. And in my mind, I was like, they're doing the way cooler version. We're in this building and they're not on the beach. So like Shireen, who runs Colossal Academy, is one of the greatest school builders on planet Earth that no one knows. And so somebody needs to go give Shireen a truckload of money because she's amazing. What Colossal Academy is really amazing. So I do think one of the things that I want to see more of in the field is I want to see more models highlighted that are doing things that break the mold. One
Hmm.
thing that's undeniable, and the reason why I argue that no matter what negative things people have to say about Alpha, the thing that is unequivocally true is that that model and that school is changing the way that people think about school for maybe the first time in some people's lifetime. I mean, it's like it is undeniable that at every conference there's some panel where someone's like, "Hey, have you heard about Alpha School?" And they say stuff that might not be true, but I sometimes keep my lip zipped because I'm like, what matters is not that they're accurate about the model. What matters is that we're finally talking about something other than HQIM.
Yeah, definitely love it. So, like, let's dream for a minute and think about these different models that we want to see, right? Like, as we're we want to expand the imagination, and I agree. When you see these different things, what are some of the key elements that you want people to be thinking about as they reimagine different
Yeah.
school models?
I think one of them is real world learning, and real world learning in two senses. Learning real world skills, but learning them in the real world. This is like learn I think learning has to have stakes to feel real. Like when
Mhm.
you watch great movies have stakes. Like, that's when the movie turns up, like um I I always think it's funny that because I have a son who loves dinosaurs, my
Mhm.
oldest son is like really into dinosaurs. So like every Jurassic Park movie we watch, and I'm like, doesn't he realize this is literally the same plot every time? But they do such a good job of like introducing both the stakes and the conflict. And I think we should have that in learning, like rooted in the real world. Like let the learning bleed outside of the walls of your school. And like, here's the great thing about adults. It's like we can figure out how to make it safe. Like we can. It's there are all these things that I've always wanted to do, and I got to do a lot of them at Alpha. And like we figured out how to make sure nobody was harmed or kidnapped or like dead. Like we figured it out. I think the other thing is there needs to be a power shift, like a power dynamic shift, which is like the words of students must mean more to us as adults. A
Mhm.
lot of what happens in school buildings is sort of legislated and created to make adults feel comfortable. And I think we have to start shifting that in ways that, yeah, like it's going to make us feel uncomfortable. Um, one of the things that I will never forget um, from Graham Fry, who Graham was leading the program at Alpha, and he's now also at Primer. When COVID hit, every metric that we cared about skyrocketed because when they went home, students were already used, they were just already used to setting goals, being autonomous, all that kind of stuff. There were reasons for it. And we had this meeting where Graham said, no one write anything about this. Like no one. And everyone's looking at me because I was like on LinkedIn there and he's like, we do not need to be the people at this time in the world that say, we know y'all are struggling, but we figured it out. And he said, if we are going to change the way the system works, we cannot do it with 1,000 egos in the room.
Mhm.
And I've never forgotten that line because to me, it is the thing that holds us back. Our degrees and diplomas and all the accolades we get sometimes make us forget that like that influencer that those students are watching, that person is far more powerful than whatever anecdote or cool story you think you have in your third period class. Like Mr. Beast and the way that he is able to grab and hold attention is something that we as educators should be learning from. So I think the last thing I would
Mhm.
say is like we have to drop our egos and start to go to places where like that make us feel uncomfortable as adults so that we can literally learn to communicate in new ways with our students and together like co-design and build the future with them of learning.
Yes, everything to that. I'm struck by this idea of like the power of the adults. I know this, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, but why? Like we
Mm.
go into education
Yeah.
to impact the lives of youth, right? Like that's why we go in. I don't know any educator who went in to like have power over kids and have people
Mhm.
be miserable and hate school.
Right.
So what is it that we get in that space, we get in that classroom, we get in the role, and all of a sudden we're uncomfortable listening to students. We're uncomfortable, creating and sharing that space and co-designing. Like, how do we break down that barrier? How would like,
Yeah. I I have this hot take that I have not said a lot, but I think it's because we
it's coming to you
created.
first here, hot take.
Yeah, this is really, yeah. You're gonna hear it for the first. But I do think it's because we created and we created awards and accolades for educators. And I know that's a hard thing to say because on one hand, educators, all of them need far more recognition that you get. but I also think that we decided to start separate, like we created a rat race inside of the industry. And all of a sudden there's an idea of a highly effective educator and one who's not. And what I think that is doing is it's turning really something that is like it has to be from the heart.
Mhm.
It's turning it into just another profession. And the thing that we are losing is something that I didn't realize until I was older, something that I grew up in that was ingrained in me. We have lost deep respect for the craft of teaching.
Yep. That when you said that's exactly what I was thinking, like HQIM and standard,
Yep.
we've gotten so hyper standardized
That's it. Yep.
in this age of No Child Left Behind, which has been the bulk of my career. And I watched my mom, a teacher, do amazing things before, and I watched it change her as an
Mm,
educator when she was chasing the standards and chasing the alignment with her colleagues for fear of standing out. And
yep.
that yeah, the high quality instructional material, the way that everyone has to be doing the same thing has really killed the craft. I could not agree with you more. And that joy, right? The
Yeah.
joy of educators that they get from creating something, from understanding their learners and working on a project together, it has separated. And I think the other piece is like technology. I'm all for technology. I love a lot of use of technology in different ways, but I've seen more and more teachers stand behind their screens and watch kids.
Yep.
So they
Yep.
watch them on their screens because it's efficient. They sit at their desk, they can see all the things and make sure they're not cheating. And I understand a lot of that, but like the power of walking up to a young person and kneeling down next to them and how are you doing on this? Can I help you? What do you need? Oh, you're off task. Um, is so much more humane and builds that connection rather than creates the divide and that power dynamic. And it's sad to see that we communicate in class on email instead of just having conversations with one
Yeah.
another.
I mean, the thing that we used to say a lot at Alpha is the only good technology is technology that creates more room for meaningful human moments. And if it's not that, we didn't want, I mean, like it, I think you hit it on the head. We've decided we've over standardized the teaching profession to where we've turned an art form into a profession. And I really want people to rediscover the art form that is teaching because it's something that I feel like is sacred. I also love coaching. Like,
Mhm.
and I when I was coaching, I went to the school of Nick Saban, meaning like all of the my favorite college coaches. I read every book. I went to every coaching clinic. I like Shaka Smart probably doesn't even realize this, but I snuck into his practices and hid like up in the nosebleeds more times than he probably knows, and just was in awe of how he was able to create an environment for players. And I took those things and I implemented them in the classroom. Like I kid you not, I have never used a scope and sequence one time ever. And
I'm not surprised.
yeah, like I had the luxury of not teaching. So the one thing I knew is I was never going to teach a tested subject because I wasn't going to let them take from me my ability to create.
Yeah.
And I created every lesson. So if I taught you and you were listening to this, every lesson plan was made from scratch, like the hard way.
Something that just as like as I'm talking to you and hearing you share your experiences, like you are a learner, right? You are deeply a learner and want to know more. So the like the deep hatred that you said about school, but your desire to be a learner are like very much in contrast. Um, and I just think that that says a lot about your vantage point and what's possible in schools and then as educators. But also, not all educators. this has taken me a long time to figure out, maybe longer
Mm,
than it should have. Not all educators want to be that creative design from scratch, and that is also okay,
yep.
right?
Yep.
And there
It,
are some really amazing educators who are really good at like developing the skills in young people and meeting their needs and doing different things that don't want to be creative. And that's, I mean, that was my mom. She was not one necessarily who was like wanted to design all this curriculum and projects, but really incredible teacher, always could know what each young person needed and always
yeah.
was like holding all of them with such care. And she's probably listening, so hi mom. Um,
Yeah.
but I think about the craft of education, and like it just makes me think about teams and how we can work together in those teams so that
Yep.
people who want to create can, others can benefit from it. But that's just another space as we are developing educators as professionals. We can't work in isolation. We really have to be thinking about a professional educator is not one who exists in a silo. They are one who like works with others, youth, their colleagues to continually learn and figure out how to meet those needs.
That is so right. I mean, when I think about it, I always love the year that I spent at Rosemont Sixth Grade Center because it w it was inadvertently this like I had this group of teachers that like we all supported each other. We had Lasario, the math teacher. I was teaching history. I taught history next to an art teacher
Mhm.
named Chris Bond, and like we all of us had something different. But when you put it together, boy, that experience was powerful. And I think you said it exactly right. Like not every teacher has to reinvent the wheel every time. Like sometimes, yes, like you need it's just like any sports team or really any effective team, everybody's got a role to play.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's funny, I was on a panel last night and they asked us, each person, what was what was your favorite teacher? And it all boiled down to the the teachers that cared enough to build relationships with students. Like if there's one thing that everybody's got to have,
Yes.
you just mentioned it about your mom. Your mom knew every single student. Like
Mhm.
I watched my mom do the same thing growing up, and like yeah,
Yep. So the care is like has to be across all, and then we can
right,
leverage these different strengths from the team.
exactly, yeah,
That's going to be part of our model when we're building this model of, like
that's
that,
right.
the teaming, that core, that has to be part of it, the real world learning and all of that.
Yep.
So I can't not have you on this podcast and not talk about just what you're learning about AI and what that also means, right?
Yeah,
So there's a lot of noise about AI. There's a lot of different ways that people are using it or not using it or scared of it. Um, what do we need to know as educators as we think about AI and what's possible looking forward?
yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, there's a couple things. One, I think AI is it's my friends at PlayLab. They like to say AI is math, not magic.
Mhm.
And I mean, that is such a powerful line to me because that is literally true. These large language models, they don't know you, they don't feel for you. They're like they actually don't know anything. They're rapid prediction engines, and that means that number two is also true, which means that there are tools in your tool belt. And actually, like the thing that I've been telling people more often is like you actually don't have to use AI to be effective as a teacher. Um, it is it is becoming so pervasive
Mhm.
that it is going to become like Microsoft Word. And it is like it would be everyone has to admit, like if you applied to a job and you were like, listen, I'll do everything else, but I'm not going to use Microsoft Word. You got to admit that's a little weird.
It's a little weird.
Like it is effective. Like at it, AI has some things that it's really, really good at, and some of those things will help educators beyond just saving time. It's not about like you. Yes, all of the like. Yes, it can lesson plan for you. Yes, it can ideate for you. Like yes, it can write emails, and like you should use it for all those things. You should use it for advanced search and all that kind of stuff. but I would look to AI to be my like creative co-pilot. So if you are like we were talking about the different types of teachers, like if you need more executive functioning like I do, like I just figured this out with Copilot. I can pull up my email and have Copilot, which is attached to my email, and I can just ask, hey, of all the emails in my inbox, what are the top 10 emails I have to respond to right now? Like that makes me better.
That's awesome.
But if you're not the creative type, treat AI as your creative companion.
Mhm.
I think the last thing I would say is the thing that I want all teachers to know is regardless of how you feel about this at the present moment, your students are going to exist in a world where this is not an option.
Mhm.
Uh, Usage of AI in our lifetime has already not been an option. So generative AI is the new thing, but you
Mhm.
have been using and interfacing with AI since like your Garmin days. Like I remember we worked on a project at Alpha. We were trying to build something in 2017 called CoachBot, and CoachBot was an AI assistant where we had somebody had gotten access to IBM Watson at some level,
Mhm.
and we were trying to turn that into an AI coaching companion for students in 2017. Like, so like I just in the education space, I'm fortunate to have been in a place where like we have been where a lot of people are trying to go. And I can tell you this, when we introduced it to students, the students were like, we hate this. Like, why do you, you so like the market will change, the world will change. And I do think that there is an imperative for educators. You do not have to be a technophile. You don't have to know everything about it, but I do think we have to know how to use AI tools, how to be dexterous with AI tools. So at the Reinvention Lab at Teach for America, the term that we use is AI dexterity. We don't use the term AI literacy as much.
Okay.
AI literacy is important. Knowing how these things work is important, but I am far more concerned with your ability to pick and choose which AI tools and when you use AI tools, which is what we
Mhm.
call dexterity. So like sometimes like yeah, do you need a friend of mine just texted me before this podcast and was like, "Hey, what's a great AI tool to generate a business card for me?" And I was like, "How about you just use a Canva template? Like that would be much faster. And, like it'd probably be a better result." So I think it's like knowing how to pick and choose, but I do think we owe it to our students to know
Mhm.
enough about and like have enough command over these AI platforms to be able to give it to them responsibly, right? So
Right.
because like they're going to exist in a world where like it for them, I mean, like there will be a time where like employers, we're already there. Employers are not asking you if you know how to use LLMs. They're expecting
Right.
that you know how to use them.
And I think, yeah, and being able to teach how you, like you said, dexterity. I love that. I'm gonna borrow that and use that because it is
Yeah,
like figure out why you're using these tools, how
yeah,
you're using them. And I love how you gave the example of like, what am I missing and how can this be a support, right? Do I need it to help me with executive functioning? That's great. Like, or the creativity, or just as a thought partner and as a coach, but understanding your strengths, not losing those, amplifying them. And I
yeah,
think being able to like work with students in that same way, young people, helping them figure out what tools they have at their disposal, what will help them, what's not going to help them, what's ethical. Those are the types of questions that we need to be talking about, thinking about, and coaching instead of like either fine, use it all or don't, right? Like that's not helpful either when they don't have a guide and a coach in the process.
100%. Yep.
All right, one more question before we get to rapid fire. If you have a piece of advice for leaders right now navigating this moment, there's a lot of talk about redesign, reinvention. What's your advice to leaders navigating this moment?
Oh, this is
No, it's
good
not an
question.
easy question, sorry.
No, I love this question. Um, I mean, I really do. I think my advice to them is to get results that you've never gotten. You have to do something you've never done before.
Hmm.
And I I say that because I mean this is gonna cause good trouble, but like NAEP scores are not enough. Like that doesn't tell us anything. And so if we want to get different results, you got to do something you've never done before. And fortunately, I don't think people realize how beautiful a position the field is in right now, in that you have organizations like yours, Learner Center Collaborative, you have Learner Studio, you have the Rhythm Project, like you
Mhm.
have the Reinvention Lab, you have organizations where people get to spend all of their time focused on the future of learning. And you can go work with those people. You can go learn from those people. We're all putting out content. I
Yep.
like it is there's never been a better time for you to say, yeah, I'm gonna do something different. And I also just
Have
like,
support.
yeah, like I think so much of the way I think about this is wrapped up in the figure of Michelle Culver.
Love her.
Michelle,
She was my last guest on the podcast. She's amazing.
oh, was she really? Oh, I love that. Michelle, the day I was ready to leave Alpha, that was actually my first call. Um, is to her, and she is the one. She literally said, I was standing outside of my friend's house, and she was like, "Well, let's build a job for you right now." And like literally, we built my job at the Reinvention Lab, and like the next day, I was like gone because. But Michelle as a figure is really important, I think, for the field. She doesn't talk about this enough. I'm going to pressure her to talk about this now. But like the ability to go from, hey, I've built all of these things at Teach for America and they work. And then she looks up and goes, oh, actually, they didn't work like I thought they were working. But instead of lying to herself or saying, we live and learn, she did the most badass thing you could do. And she went to the organization, used all of her social capital, and was like, let me hire these weird people who will disagree with me so that we can go back and fix all of that. Like, that's the type of leader that will really change the world. And
Yep.
what's crazy is that there's more people like her that are in the field right now. Like you
Mhm.
think of Kim Smith, you think like
Yes.
there's more people like that. And so there's never been a better time for you to go learn and decide to do something different if you're a school leader right now.
I love that, and I definitely am such a fan of both Kim and Michelle and leaders in the system. Like you said, there's
Yeah.
people who want to support you because we can't, from the outside, change the face of public education, which is my main goal, without
Right.
working collaboratively with the people in the system. And I know there are so many system leaders who are also saying, "You're right, we can't keep doing this." But I don't know exactly how to do it. I need help. I need partners. I need to ask. And so, keep asking. And like you said, we are not going to get different results if we don't do things differently. And I am encouraged around state of California, different places leaning into school redesign.
Yeah,
It's not going to be fast, but it's momentum in the right direction to start this realization that we got to do something differently and it's about time.
100%. Yep.
All right, we got rapid fire very quickly.
Okay.
So, on that same vein, what is one thing we should stop doing in education?
Oh, standardized testing.
What's one thing we should start doing?
Listening to students, listening to young people.
Yep. What should we keep doing?
Ooh. Um, I mean, really, we keep taking swings. We should keep at it. Keep trying.
I like it. What is one thing that you are learning or focusing on your own right now?
Um, I am learning to like better at like paying attention to the details of like scaling a thing.
Hmm.
I'm great at going -1 to 0 and 0 to 1, but I'm learning how to scale and sustain programs over time.
Oh, we should talk more about that. Okay, what is one thing that many people might not know about you?
One thing that many people don't know about me is that I worked at the Houston Zoo for 6 years from the time I was 13 until I was 19. And I love zoos. I love being inside of zoos.
No way. I would not have guessed. Very cool. Do you have a favorite quote or saying? You dropped a few today already. Is there one that's top of mind?
The one that I don't like that is my favorite is do simple better. I had a horrible habit of overcomplicating things, and someone said that to me all the time, and it has literally stuck with me every day of my life.
Awesome. What is something that you're grateful for right now?
I'm grateful for my family, my wife and my 4 kids. Most of who I am is really owed to them. If I didn't have the good pressure of being an example for them and providing for them, I would most people wouldn't even know who I am.
Good pressure. Last one. We can close it out with your hope for the future of education.
Yeah, my hope for the future of education is that there are so many different types of unique and interesting models of school that are all financed in ways that allow people to get to them. That there is no kid in the world that can say they don't have a school community where they're cared for and seen and where they can learn and build the life that they envision for themselves.
So good. So aligned. Thank you, Mike. I loved this. Glad we finally got a chance to sit down and catch up, and excited for all the different things. And keep following Mike on LinkedIn. He's always got lots of good stuff to share.
Thank you.
Oh, hang on. I don't want to end. Oh, I know what I want to do. Sorry, Andy. You got to figure out how to stop that. All right.